Welcome back, social media friends and acquaintances. Today I came to read to you again. And another chapter from this book, Punch Me Up to the Gods by Brian Broome. I would highly recommend this book. It is written by a gay black man, and it details his upbringing and adulthood in Ohio. Anyway, about 3/4 of the way through the book, boom, there's this chapter that's written from the perspective of his mother. And I knew after reading it, I knew after the first couple pages, I was gonna read it on camera here, because if even one other person listens to however many pages this is, then that's better than zero. You know what I mean? These type of candid thoughts from women, from people in general, but like especially a wife, are invaluable, but they're not as prevalent or common as I would like them to be. So here we go. The name of the chapter, the title of the chapter, is Let the Church Say Amen. Amen is in quotation marks. Alright, here we go. Orating. There we go. I had to find, where can my eyes see this? My husband don't like me coming to church. He pretty well hate everybody in here. He can't watch me while I'm here. He don't like it when I talk to other people or have any kind of life outside the house, and that's partly why I come. To get away. Talk to some people. Get a break from his fussing and complaining all the time. I swear if that man wasn't fussing about something, he wouldn't have nothing else to do. I sit here in this pew and enjoy the sunlight as it comes streaming through the windows, and the paper fans get to fanning, and I can feel the spirit. Maybe the spirit is freedom. When I'm at home, I don't feel at home. I joined every organization here at this church. The adult choir, the usher board, the ladies guild, just so I don't have to be in the house with him. I used to make all my kids come to church every Sunday too. I made sure they was in Sunday school and in the junior choir because I want them to grow up right. Because I know what sin is, and I don't. And I know how it can ruin a life. So I fought them into jackets and ties and buttons and bows and made sure they come here to get the word. The two oldest ones done got too old for me to fight them into the church anymore. They put up such a fuss that I just eventually stopped trying. I got 3 kids, a boy, 14, a girl, 12, and another boy, 8. And I believe the youngest is the one who wrote this book. I like to hear my youngest boy, Brian, sing in the choir here. He's sitting up there now. He the only one I can still make come to church, but I don't really have to make him. He come all on his own because he liked to be with me. That boy can sing. He put his heart and soul into it. His eyes squinched shut and belting out a heavenly vibrato. The song they gave him to solo is Soon and Very Soon, and he sing it so good. When the piano player starts the intro, I can just about see the electricity run through his body when he take the microphone. He looks just like his daddy. I hope he don't turn out to be like his daddy. But men lie. That's what they do. But I ain't so innocent myself. I did what I did, like you do when you young. You ain't no use in complaining. Sometimes the life you laid out for yourself ain't the life that was intended for you to have. They say everything happened for a reason, and my story ain't no more special than the next woman's is. We have to navigate through men in order to have any kind of life, and sometimes you do that successful and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you find yourself in strange waters dashed up on the rocks, and then you just have to make do. Every woman I know done had to navigate since the time we was little girls, and black girls get set out on the most dangerous waters. I came up north on a train to Ohio when I was 11 years old, straight from the Georgia woods. It was like a whole new world up here. Daddy had sent for us, although I really couldn't tell you why. Maybe somebody told him it was the right thing to do. He had left me, Ma, and my sisters down south a long time before, and I couldn't tell you why he sent for us to come up here if you pointed a gun to my head. Once we got here, him and Ma stayed together for about a week, and then we barely saw him after that. I don't know what that man was doing with his time. He never gave us no money. When he was around, all him and Ma did was fight, and when I say fight, I mean just that. If you hit Ma, you better had expected to get hit back the same or worse. She wasn't the one to just stand there and let herself be hit by no man. And maybe that's why he tried to run her down with that car one time. Maybe he figured if he couldn't hit her, then the car was the next best option. After he tried to run her down, she got up off the ground and he went for her and she went for him, and they whipped each other's behinds, busted lips and broken teeth. They fought like they wanted to tear each other into pieces. She took every blow he dished out and gave back just as good until her strength ran out. But that's just the way it was back then. There wasn't nobody for her to call for help, really. You either fought back or got beat, maybe even killed. Bottom line is that they just didn't like each other at all, and I had to wonder how they ever got together in the first place. I guess he figured since he didn't like her, that he didn't have to provide for the children he helped her make. Getting a nickel out of him was next to impossible. I don't know what would drive a man to not take care of his kids. Even though they was technically married, he didn't even live with us. And that left it up to Ma to bring money into the house. She started doing washing and cleaning for white people in Newton Falls. She started selling homemade dinners out of the house. She even got a license to do it. What she didn't have a license for is that liquor she sold. And she went to jail a couple of times behind that. Drunk people was in and out of the house all day and night. It was like a whatchamacallit, a speakeasy. Ma drank too. She was dead drunk every day, and I guess that just come from the stress of it all. You can't really rely on men, and Ma didn't. She did what she had to do, and even though she wasn't no model of the Christian woman, she always made us kids go to church. She didn't know exactly why, mind you. She just knew that good girls went to church, and even if she didn't go herself, she made us go, so that we could grow up right. Maybe she thought it was too late for her, but not for us. But I won't hear nobody say nothing bad about my mother. She was a good mother. I think she was just sad, and the drink was the only thing that took that sad away. I didn't want to be sad like that. Right after I got out of high school, I took off for the big city, Dayton, Ohio. I have to laugh at it now because we really did see Dayton as the big city back then. A cousin told us that there was good jobs there, and me and my friends Ida and Grace took off to be single girls in the city. It was all so glamorous. We all got jobs at Bike's department store. I was the umbrella girl. I sold umbrellas and stood there in my press dress, not making no money unless it was raining outside. I have to laugh about it now, the way we was playing at growing up. Me and Ida and Grace found a rooming house to stay in that was owned by Hasty Chatham, a round, light-skinned woman who must have been half white. She had real good hair. Just because she was light-skinned don't mean she was mean neither. But she wanted her money on time. It was the first time I ever had my own room in my life. And we went to work and we met boys and we had us a good old time. Single girls in the city. But a city boy know how to spot a rube in a minute. A city boy know when that slick talk will work, and it sure enough worked on me. I was only 19 years old. The Reverend is talking about the wages of sin right now, and I know about that all too well. Maybe the wages ain't exactly death like dying. The wages of sin can be a spiritual death, a prison, a life derailed and unrealized. I know about the wages of sin, Pastor. Preach on. I didn't know what I was doing back then. I was just a girl, but I thought I was a woman. I hadn't even had that many boyfriends. I dated a local boy for a time before me and Ida and Grace decided to leave town. That's all I knew. Local country boys with muddy boots who all worked at the mill if they worked at all. That's why I was so outdone when William Davis from Dayton, Ohio started paying attention to me. He was a big old tall lanky man, just arms and legs everywhere. He was handsome. He had a beautiful smile and he had his own business, a dry cleaner's. I had never met a black man who had his own real business, not selling barbecue out of his split barrel, not selling white lightning out of the back seat of an old truck. He wined and dined me in ways that turned my silly head. I put him off for as long as I could before he sweet-talked me into doing what we wasn't supposed to be doing. His words were so slippery, but they seemed so real at the time. But I didn't know nothing. I didn't know that men will just say about anything that come to their head when all they want is to please themselves. And it's like the Reverend say right now, the wages of sin is death. And when I found out I was pregnant, I sure enough thought my life was over. 3 of us girls went to the big city and 2 of us came back pregnant. When I told William Davis, all he did was offer me some money for an abortion. I didn't believe in that. I still don't. After I told him no, he couldn't get rid of me fast enough. I didn't tell him off for weeks. I was tied in knots, but I just kept going to Bikes to sell umbrellas every day like everything was normal, and then one day she called me. Come on home. That's all she said. Somebody had told her, or maybe nobody told her. I still don't know how she knew. Sometimes I think it was just a mother's intuition. But no sooner did she say it that the tears fell and I was packing a bag to the same little town I had been so thrilled to leave behind. And when I got back, Daddy wouldn't speak to me. Not so much as a word. He totally shut me out. I didn't think about the irony of it at the time, with him having left us down south for Ma to raise, and his eternal stinginess and how he wasn't ever around. It just hurt. But now I think he sure had some nerve not to speak to me. There were different rules back then, and a judgment over a woman for her sin was more severe than a man's. Men expected to sin. Then they take their sin out on women. So Ma and Aunt Mary Emma went to work to make sure I was taken care of, to make sure that the eyes of the community didn't fall on me with judgment and scorn. They went to work to correct my mistakes. They wanted me to marry Junior. He would make you a good husband. That's what they kept saying. I had never given Junior so much as a second thought. He was just another country boy to me. I had seen him at a few parties, and he was a good dancer, and that was it. But he had a good job working at the mill. That's what they kept telling me. He wasn't much to look at. Short, squat, bug-eyed. Dark skin, too, black as midnight. Not that I got any problem with that. I'm pretty dark too, but he was real dark, midnight black. He wasn't much to talk to, neither. Didn't have a thing to say to hold my interest. He didn't ever think about things the way I did. I thought he was boring and ugly. I was vain. But Ma said he had a good job, and I can understand what, with all she went through, why she thought that was the most important thing. And after all is said and done, you gotta pay for what you did in the end. Everybody do. It don't matter how young or pretty or smart you think you are. You gotta pay for the dirt that you do, either here on earth or in the hereafter. But I didn't like him. Not one bit. Thought he was beneath me. I gotta laugh about it now because ain't no way I should have been judging nobody from my position in my condition. But Lord knows I had no feeling at all for that man in any part of me. But I let them talk me into it. Ma and Aunt Mary, Emma, said it was the best thing for me to do, so I married him. We got married in the backyard of Ma's house in the summertime. The whole neighborhood came, and if you look at those pictures from the wedding, you can see that ain't one person smiling. I have a similar picture. I never been married, no. But I have a picture of a wedding where nobody is smiling, and I'm like 5 or 6 years old, and of course, I'm smiling. None of the adults are smiling. It's one of my more favorite pictures. Everybody looked like they'd just been to a funeral. I look like I'm hypnotized, just in a daze in every photo. I knew in my bones that marrying that man was the wrong thing to do, but sometimes the wrong thing is the only thing. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. So I decided to try to make a life with this man I didn't love, didn't hardly even like. After the wedding, Daddy came around and decided to speak to me again. He gave us a little house to live in because he knew we was going to need it. What they call a shotgun house. And he doted on my first little boy when he came. Bought him things, even gave me a quarter or two every now and then. I just spent my days with the baby, and don't ever let anybody tell you that that's just joy all the time. I lost what little sense of myself I ever even had. Junior worked nights at the mill and slept and ate, and I watched the baby, and that's just the life we had. Just a year before, I had been in the big city, living the high life, and now here I am with a husband I barely know and a baby who barely knew me. It can make a girl feel alone. But Ma visited. She doted on the boy too, and made life in that house almost bearable. She taught me everything she knew. Told me never to wake up the baby for any reason because that's when he was growing. Showed me how to hang curtains in that ugly house. But then she would leave and it would just be me and the baby. Then Junior would come home. And things were expected. Cooking and cleaning. I could do. But him lingering in the bedroom doorway with that look on his face was just something I don't want to face. I didn't want him to touch me. But that's part of what a girl in my position had to do. I didn't like his hands on me. It didn't feel good. He was rough and clumsy at the same time. There's just some things you don't talk about. You just don't. I think maybe he knew. He had to know that I didn't want to be there. He had to feel my distance. He must have known that I dreamed about escape. And that's when the man started lying for real. It's time for a selection from the choir, but it's not my boy singing yet. His voice is high like a girl's still because he is so young. When he sing, it make the whole church say amen. It makes me proud. When I think about how my children got here, I can only say that sometimes blessings come in the form of heartache at first. I can't say that this is how I envisioned my life would go. I had plans that were sprouts that never had a chance to grow. There ain't no sense in going on about it now, but Junior lied so much that I couldn't begin to separate the lies from the truths. He kept me confused on purpose. He lied about things that didn't even need to be lied about sometimes. He lied about things that was important too. He connived. I can't have no kids. That was what he told me after my oldest was born, and I believed him. I just flat out believed he was telling me the truth because why would somebody lie about that? He didn't give me no doctor's note or nothing. I just believed him and I tried my best to keep him happy. He was good to the baby and he had a good job. But the wages of sin had killed me inside and I didn't have no emotion for him. So he told me that he couldn't have kids, and then when I got sick, I thought I was dying. I couldn't figure out what was wrong for the longest time until I went to the doctor. What shocked me more than the pregnancy was this man's ability to lie. To look you right in the face and tell a bold and ugly lie right then and there. It was clear to me that I had no idea who I was sharing a house with. Right then and there I knew that I was right in the middle of the biggest mistake of my life. He went crazy when I tried to confront him about it. I had never seen nobody act like that before, screaming and spitting and carrying on. He told me that he never said that he couldn't have kids when I knew that's exactly what he told me. He tried to make out like I was the one who was lying. He said I was crazy, but I knew that I knew what I knew. That was funny to read. I was like, this can't be right, but it was. He said I was crazy, but I knew that I knew what I knew. But I just gave up and accepted what was to come. A new baby from a man who was a stranger to me. And a conniving stranger at that. We never talked. There was no romantic moments, no laughter between us. We never shared anything about ourselves. It was all just such an arrangement. And I was the unhappiest I had ever been in all my born days. And another baby was on the way. The very first job I ever had was as a maid at the hotel out on Route 5 when I was a teenager. Cleaning up after white folks ain't no kind of way to feel good about yourself. Plus, they just talk to you any old way they want to. I was 16 years old and Ma had to sign for me to be able to work, which she was more than happy to do. She cleaned up after white folks, and so would I, and that's the way that went. But just between you and me, I dreamed about being a nurse. Mind you, I didn't know nothing about being no nurse. I liked the uniform all white and clean and professional. I even thought about being a teacher for a while, but all the teachers I ever saw was white. Besides, I don't feel like I was intelligent enough to teach nobody. Little did I know at the time that you had to be plenty intelligent to be a nurse. I just couldn't see past the uniform. Every once in a great while, I would see a black nurse and my mouth would drop open. I didn't know how colored women could be nurses. That's what they called us back then, colored. It even said colored on my birth certificate. That word always struck me strange, like we was supposed to be white, but somebody took a big crayon and colored us in, being real careful to stay inside the lines. Like somebody took something perfectly white, like a nurse's uniform, and sullied it with all different shades of brown and black. I never liked for nobody to call me colored. But I wanted to be a nurse, and I dreamed about it while I was in the hotel cleaning nasty white people sheets and picking their wet hairs out of the drain. But some dreams you just keep silent. We didn't have aspirations like black folks do now, becoming doctors and lawyers and whatnot. But I still sometimes want to wear that uniform. The Nurses Guild here at the church get to wear the white uniform, and I'm thinking about joining. All you gotta do is learn CPR in case somebody fall out into the aisle with the Holy Spirit or faint dead away at a funeral and might need resuscitate. Maybe I'll do that. I always wanted to be a nurse, but by the time the second baby was born, all I could do was be a housewife. Sometimes I think Junior planned it that way. I just busied myself with wifely duties while I carried around two babies that I was tricked into. I made friends with the next door neighbor lady. We canned vegetables together and gossiped and watched our stories on TV. I devoted myself to cleaning house, the cooking, the shopping, things that I thought a wife should do. But me and him never talked about nothing. We just played our roles and no love passed between us. Not then, not now. Some of the things he do might look on the outside like love, but it ain't love. It is something else entirely. So I was standing in the checkout line at the Miracle Mart one day like you do. I got my cart full of groceries and the babies. Normally I don't pay no attention to all that stuff they got waiting for you to buy at the last minute at the checkout. They try to trick you with the impulse buy. I learned that early on. But I was standing there so long that a book caught my eye. It was one of those self-help type books like bored white women buy. I couldn't tell you what the name of the book was today if you put a gun to my head. But all over the cover, it had words about realizing your full potential and gaining control of your life. It was one of those types of books. Something about that book intrigued me, and before I knew it, I had thrown it in the cart and bought it. I guess maybe something in me thought I had needed it. But I took it home and started to read it, and it had some decent stuff to say. I read it for a few nights and just left it on the nightstand by the bed like you do. Next night I go to reach for my book and it ain't there. I know I left it there, but it ain't nowhere to be seen. I tore the house up looking for my book and couldn't find it nowhere. Anyway, I guess I forgot about it until a few days later when I went to take the garbage out. Something caught my eye at the very bottom of all the eggshells and coffee grounds and whatnot. There it was, my book. My heart liked to sink to my stomach. Ripped to shreds, pages tore out and crumbled up. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if you told me he had ripped it up with his teeth, tore it apart like he hated it, like he was trying to kill something dead. I stood there and stared at it for a while, with my mouth hanging open in shock until I just closed the lid. There was no point in asking him why he did that. We never talked about it. I just let it die. I let all of it die and just made a mental note about who I was married to. I fought back the tears. He had gave me another reason to look at him different. Another reason to be afraid. My second baby was a girl. Cutest thing you ever did see. He was happy with a girl. His firstborn. He liked having a girl. He fell in love with her and played with her and praised her every move. Seemed to me that men only happy with the female sex when we just girls. They want us to stay girls because they don't like grown women. They don't like us at all. I love to hear my Brian sing, but you won't catch me fawning all over my children. White folks got plenty of time to tell their children how wonderful and special they is, but that's not how I was raised. Black child need to learn discipline in this world because if they don't learn it, they end up dashed up on the rocks, in jail or dead or worse. Ma and Daddy showed us they loved us by taking care of us, making sure we went to church and stayed out of trouble. I ain't never heard I love you, not one time from my mother and father, and that's just how it was. You take care of them and you make sure that they do right is all. Junior was raised the same. His daddy was the meanest man I ever did meet. He beat his kids. I whooped my kids when they misbehaved, but he beat his... knocked them clean across the room bloody. You don't get coddled in a black family. The third baby was just a case of me doing what wives have to do, I guess. We didn't use no contraception. Lord knows I hated having that man on me, but it was just something I had to endure. But when this child here came, I swore I wouldn't have no more babies. I asked Junior if I could get on the pill, and he said no. A wife had to have her husband sign back then, but I didn't tell him that. I had to trick him. I told him some old story about having to sign something or other, and he can hardly read anyway. And then when I went and got myself on the pill, and then I had what they call a tubal ligation. I didn't even ask him if I could. I ain't having no more babies for this man, and that operation the only reason I'm not sitting here with 7 or 8 babies right now. I didn't want to get no deeper in the prison than I am now. He only give me so much money. He only allowed me so far from the house. The only time I see people is when I'm in this church. And when I started to lose people, it all got so much worse. Ma died in a nursing home and she was only 46 years old. Scleroderma. I still don't know what that is to this day. I've never looked it up. But if you ask me, I'd tell you she drank herself to death. Daddy died a few days later of a brain hemorrhage at his own birthday party. After you lose your mama and your daddy, you feel like you're just alone in the world. I had my sisters, but they had their own lives. One moved away and the other was busy being even younger than I was, single and free. After Ma and Daddy died, the walls just closed in and the loneliness took over. Every night, Junior would go off to work and be gone till the morning. After I put the kids to bed, there was nothing left to do. I don't know why I started letting an old boyfriend from high school call me on the phone. We would stay up and chat, and he just helped to keep the loneliness at bay. We would talk until the wee hours about nothing or everything. And I won't lie and say that I didn't flirt. I talked to that man in my marital home on my marital phone that Junior paid for, and that was wrong for me to do. I won't lie and say that we didn't start having an affair. I just wanted to feel young and free again, and I was lonely. Late one night, I was on the phone with him just talking about nothing when I heard a noise, and it just about stopped my heart. I jumped up from the couch and went creeping toward the front door, where the noise had come from, and right there, lurking in the doorframe, was Junior, all silhouette against the nighttime. He just stood there for a second, and I stood there with the phone in my hand and my mouth hanging open. My first thought wasn't about the phone. It wasn't about anything except for wondering why he was there. What he was doing home when he was supposed to be at work, and I was just stood there looking at this ghost in the doorframe until he spoke. I caught you. Them words rolled out of his mouth all calm and cold and mean. I caught you. I have never seen a man move so fast. He lunged at me with the full force of his body, and I dropped the phone to the floor and screamed. I screamed for somebody to help me. I didn't have no time to run. He grabbed at my arm and held it in the vice of his hand, and he dragged me. He just kept shouting, I caught you, over and over again and shaking me up. I screamed because I hadn't ever seen that man act the way he was acting in that moment. I screamed and I heard my kids start to wake up, and I tried to tell him I was sorry. I tried to tell him that I needed to go see about the kids, but he wasn't hearing a scream or a word or any kind of pleading. He dragged me kicking and screaming out the front door. He forced me out the front door and dragged me into the car. I told him that I didn't want to go nowhere, but I figured that he had already planned that he didn't want nobody to see or hear what he was about to do to me. I told him I didn't want to go, but he dragged me into the car and drove away, and all the way in the car I told him over and over again that I was sorry. I tried to come up with any excuse I could to calm him down, but he just kept looking out the front window and driving until we reached the cemetery, and he told me to get out. Please, Junior. He laid his hands on me that night. He beat me in the cemetery. There was no amount of hands I had that I could throw up to protect myself from him. He just kept on saying, I caught you. I caught you. That's all he said. It was like he had checked out and there was nothing left but rage. I don't like to talk about it. We drove back home silent, but my mind was going a mile a minute. I wondered how I would get out. No job, no parents to run to. I wondered how I'd make it through. I worried about my children. And if you want to know the truth, that's the night I knew for sure that I was trapped, and I've been trapped ever since. So I come to church just like Mom made us do. He hate me coming here, but I guess he figure there ain't no way he can stop me. It's too many women in here that care about whether or not I show up. But they all got their own problems, their own men. I make my children birthday cakes. I make sure they fed and clean and that they get to school. That's what I'm supposed to do. But that man ain't got no wife. All he got is a woman he pour all his crazy into that's dying to get away. My oldest boy is long and lanky and good with sports. My girl got a spirit and a passion about life, and she stays curious. My youngest boy, the one up here singing his heart out right now, I know he won't ever disappoint me. He love his ma, and he sure can sing.